Are we going to get something to eat? Yeah, we'll be. You know what? They're few. Yeah. I just want to. Okay, we have some water.
I'm going.
Be careful. Big step. Walk the handles because it's kind of using handles. Walk on the grips at least.
Whoa. Look down.
Yeah, be careful on your people. It's going to be slippery. It's the wrong thing. Oh, my bed. Freaky. I think it's sand. It's starting up again.
What is it?
Go straight down there. You're using Ghost what? Ghost radar?
Just like the room. That's what I mean. Unless you sleep there.
Stretched and slippery and everything. That'll be a very Hi, Johnny boy. Hi, I'm gonna get it. Yeah, seriously.
Wait, am I going to be able to watch these on YouTube, Johnny?
Yep.
Jackson, I'll take it. The whole way up. I'll take it for a while.
Of land to the mainland. It was almost an island. And then over a century and a half, gravelly fill from the islands and from a town, a big hill in a town called East Needham, 9 miles to the west of us, was used to fill in about 1,500 acres of area surrounding the original Boston Peninsula to a depth of 20 feet to create more real estate. And so we're going to go through some of that now, something called the Back Bay. I want to just show you that and get a sense of, go back over the Charles River, named after Prince Charles, way back in when John Smith was exploring this area in the early 1600s, before the Pilgrims came over. John Smith, he had to do with the Jamestown settlement, and you hear his tale having to do with Pocahontas and all of that. Well, he was the one that named this area New England, because there was already New France, New Spain, and he had great plans for this area. But things come and go, you know, plans of the early settlers to come over here kind of would fall apart. And then you had people who were possessing the Bible in their own language. There were Bibles now in English, Bibles in French, Bibles in German. That was against the law for many, many centuries, even after the invention of printing. You were just supposed to have your religion from the pulpit. And the ministers who knew Greek, Latin, and Hebrew would tell you all about it. You weren't supposed to have your own. Well, by the time you get down into the late 1500s, people were looking at the Bible and making their own decisions. Oh, it calls for this, this, and this, but not necessarily this, this, and this. And there were a lot of people that wanted to take the Church of England and strip it down a little bit, make it more fundamental, like the churches in the early days, the century after St. Paul. And they looked in the Bible and they thought, oh, those early churches, they had pastors, deacons, teachers, elders, and that's how that's where that concept came. And not all of this, and not all of the addenda, the statues and the ceremonies and the vestments and the big buildings and all that. They thought, no, we want to have it be back the way it was. And that's what some of these people wanted to purify the church. They were called Puritans. Other people thought, we're not going to purify the church. We're just going to, and we're not allowed to practice this little fundamental religion in England. And a lot of people went over to Holland because they were free to do it over there, and they were our pilgrims. The British, after they had been fighting what they called the French and Indian Wars and all that, started to say, you people over here have to pay more taxes. And they did something called the Stamp Act. And the Stamp Act was where if you were going to have any legal thing, buying a house, marriage, any kind of transactions, banking, you had to buy stamped paper in the first place to do all that on. So it was the money you paid for that paper, that was like a tax. Big riot here in Boston over that, and in New York, the Stamp Act riots. They didn't like that. And the British the British said, all right, forget it. But here's what they did. They just left one little thing in there. We're going to leave the little 1 pence per pound tax on tea. The colonists will never notice that. When they buy some of the tea and they pay for it, they pay the tax. They will be admitting going along with taxation. They'll say, well, you paid the tax on tea. Well, Sam Adams noticed that and he said, no way. And he tipped the tea that shipped over here, we're sending it right back. And that's what happened in 1773. Had 3 tea ships in the harbor.